You challenge her, and she comes right back at you because that's who she is.
That whole narrative of women's sports is boring, women's sports whatever, women's sports ain't it, is quickly changing.
We've never had that kind of crowd before.
You really are building it for the next generation. A Black woman to be a part of a sports ownership group, it is radical.
I'm Michele Fino. A lot of people just call me Fino. I work for myself, without the constraints of a big organization, and therefore consult in the purpose-driven content space. So what is it that we are looking for people to do after they interact with our content? So Chris, I'm going to pick on you first because your square wants an X, and go for it.
Okay, I'm Chris Bruss from Roku, and I oversee sports and entertainment brand partnerships, which covers a lot of different territory, but does intersect with projects like this. And one of the reasons why we were so excited about this project is because at Roku, we're the #1 streaming platform in America, and we know that streaming has grown considerably over the last few years. But one of the pain points is around sports and how people find sports and the fragmentation of sports, live sports and sports content in general. And so we've really been focusing on how do we make it easier for our consumers to find great sports content. And one of those things has been around women's sports, which is particularly fragmented and confusing. And so we're really excited about this project, both because we love the project. We were excited that our friends at P&G were involved with it, but also it was a great opportunity to have something to feature in our women's sports zone, which is a zone that where we specifically curate all the women's sports content that's available, including WNBA content, which was perfect since this film premiered right in the midst of a very exciting WNBA finals. So that's who I am, what I do, and why we were so excited about the project.
Awesome, thank you, Eric.
Hello, everyone. Eric Austin here with Procter & Gamble, Vice President of Global Marketing and Media. My job is to essentially build our brands, look for new innovative capabilities that the brands are not necessarily executing today, and build those platforms that it will be a sustaining value creation element for those brands. So that's my role on a global basis. This particular project is interesting. It gets us our brands into more long form content associate marketing. Our brands are typically in that 15 to 30, maybe even 6-second ads that are on the traditional digital platforms, but we're trying to reach all potential consumers in the categories in which we compete. So there's a lot more reach opportunity on the table. So looking at programs like this between, Roku, Uninterrupted, to really look at new ways to reach desired audiences with more relevancy and resonance.
Hi, I'm Sandrine Orabona. I'm the director of the film and the creative lead at Storyform. I think as a director and filmmaker, it's always a great opportunity to be able to tell a story in a feature film length. So that's one of the things that excited me and us to the story. There were a lot of smaller pieces around Renee after she opted out and became a co-owner and vice president. Many of them had brands associated with it, and they were all great, but they didn't necessarily go into the deeper aspect of the story. What makes a leader? What makes Renee, after focusing on sports and her career for over 20 years, decide to overnight basically give that up in the spirit of becoming an owner. And also importantly, this was a great opportunity to collaborate with all the stakeholders that you see here, Uninterrupted, P&G, Roku, and really shape a great and high impact and premium content.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Andrew, or are you just Drew?
I just drew, but it's all good. I'm senior director of brand partnerships here at Springhill Uninterrupted. Um, from time to time, Phil gives us a little sneak peek of what's in the studio's pipeline. And this project was just outstanding as far as, it being a documentary about Renee's story in particular, but, even going to what Chris said about women's sports, which is definitely on the rise, and we'd like to give attention to that. And then, of course, overseeing and working with our friends and colleagues at P&G for their Whiten the Screen initiative, just making sure that, this type of film especially gives a voice to, underrepresented, if you want to say, sometimes some people say underappreciated, individuals that are out there that are making change. And I think this project in particular, Renee's story is so inspiring because, she had to meet many moments in her life and she was able to do that successfully, sometimes when it wasn't comfortable. And I feel like, when we bring in partners like P&G, going back to purpose, based storytelling, that's exactly, I think, what this film is, and it brings to the table. And thanks again to our friends at P&G for helping us out on this.
Yes, absolutely. And then I got to watch it. Woo! I want to make sure I pronounce your name right. Anke?
Anke.
Anke. Okay.
Very simple in German. Well, I'm the other half of Storyform. So say Sandrine makes the stories, I sort of help shape them and form them. So I'm the producer on the project. Love being part of it and seeing it sort of through the very early stages in pre-production through, having it now being on Roku is a great achievement for us. And being partnered along the way with Uninterrupted, P&G, and a lot of really great humans was a very awesome experience. And Renee's story, honestly, is so honest and truthful. And to me, what was really fascinating is sort of this constant, like, striving to achieve the highest potential of yourself, right? And I think a lot of these stories around women give us that, but there's very few or very little support, right? So to Chris's point, it's a bit fragmented. It's very confusing. Where do you find these stories? Once people do, we find, however, that they're very sort of drawn to it and have a great takeaway. So purpose-driven, obviously, and that was just a great experience all around, meeting her family, meeting Renee, being part of working with the league as well. The NBA was a great partner in this as well.
Nice. And Phil.
Hi, I'm Phil Byron. I'm the head of unscripted and docs over at Uninterrupted. This project, like many documentaries, did not happen overnight. I think we are uniquely positioned as an athlete empowerment company to work with athletes of all shapes, sizes, stories, backgrounds, and one big priority for us since I started the company 8 years ago has been telling female athlete stories. I think way before everyone suddenly woke up and realized that people care about women's sports, which they always have. The issue is the content that supplements the live sports experience is super important so that fans and viewers can get to know these superstars off the court or the field. And a huge credit to P&G and Roku for backing a film like this that, Anke, Sandrine, myself, and many other talented people had been tinkering away at for 2+ years, not knowing if or when it would see the light of day. I think that's always the exciting part of what we do, but the scary part of what we do. And for us, this was definitely a no-brainer. A lot of people were chasing after Renee to tell her story when she made a lot of news. And I think, it's not obvious that people will partner with us, but we were able to convince her to work with Uninterrupted. And, that brought us to finding the right director, which we found in Sandrine, and I'm having flashbacks. I haven't seen you in that room, Sandrine, in a long time, and that was the room when I first chatted with you about this project. And, I think the story of what she's done and is doing is super inspirational. And, to Chris's point, being able to put that on a platform where maybe the, smallest of fans can go deeper on someone like Renee and see how she is changing the sport and meeting athletes where they need to be, and having that spot in the executive suite is something we haven't really seen done a lot in the documentary world. So we're super excited that we had everyone's kind of trust shaping the story, and we're thankful to you all for accepting us into your program so that hopefully more people can see it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, everyone. But you brought up an interesting point. Like this team was not the only team chasing Renee to kind of capture this story on film. Like, why this story? Where did it all start? Like, where did this all start? Which square? Who started this party?
It started uninterrupted. We are always out looking for exciting stories to tell. And to Sandrine's point, Renee made a lot of noise when she opted out in 2020. And that was the definition of one of our mantras at the company, which is more than an athlete. Renee deciding to use her platform for impact, frankly, and then doubling down by seeking an ownership spot and a executive seat on a team, which we're starting to see more of course. I think of like Natalie Portman being involved with Angel City. You think of the Major League Pickleball League, where it feels like every major athlete has a team, from Tom Brady to Drew Brees to Naomi Osaka to our co-founder LeBron James. I think what is a little bit different with Renee's story is the active nature of this position, where she is truly a vice president and she's there, and you're seeing her shape how the front office works with their athletes and their fans. And, ultimately, I think she picked us for our resume, the fact that we work well with athletes, and the fact that we also were putting, dollars behind telling the story, which not everyone does. And, P&G did, we did, Roku did, and I think that's super important for people to put their money where their mouth is, especially when it comes to telling stories of female athletes, athletes of color, queer athletes. It's really, this one is super special for all those reasons. And, getting to work with Storyform on the fun, creative part was from day one. We kept calling ourselves the Dream Team. Maybe because the team's called the Dream, but, also we were a dream team. And it was a really great process, and seeing
There's already shirts made and everything. You guys.
Exactly. But yeah, we were lucky to have her trust us with her story, because it's not easy to see yourself on screen, let alone to see yourself for 90 minutes in a documentary. I think it's hard for anybody.
Yeah, 100%. So it wasn't like she wanted a doc and went to you guys. You guys saw that there was story potential out there and then went to her. Okay. And then who was next? Storyform was next?
Yes. So, finding a filmmaker who would really take the trust we earned with Renee, but, carry the ball down the field, pun intended. So, there was a small group of folks. Sandrine has always been on a wish list of mine to work with. I mean, she worked with Rihanna, so like, come on, you got to work with those types of people. But her work speaks for itself. We had a feeling that she would be able to really foster that trust with Renee. And she did. And then, her producing partner, Anke, to her point, had to deal with all the fun stuff of we're filming in Atlanta and West Virginia, and we're going to All-Star, and how to make that all work on a documentary budget. But they were the next step along the way. And then, once we had a good amount of footage, that's when we brought Drew from our brand partnerships team into the tent, and he immediately was like, P&G needs to see this.
Nice. So Drew, how was that in your brain? Because projects come across my desk all the time too, and then you automatically know, like, okay, this brand doesn't do this brand doesn't do this brand is eliminating 900 jobs, so let's not talk to them. Like, what made you think P&G?
Yeah, we had worked with P&G before on a previous project called These Hands, which is literally looking at young Black boys, and they're known for their physicality, if you will. So the project was really to kind of change the POV that, young Black boys have these hands and they can do much more than that. And so we profiled some great former athletes who went on to other careers, like Dr. Myron Rolle, who was a former NFL player, Leland Melvin, who was a former NFL player, wide receiver, who went on to become an astronaut. So it really did run the gamut. So we were thinking of, okay, who would be perfect for this project? Because, Renee's story truly is very special, in the sense that where she started from and now where she's going, and where she's breaking down all of these different stereotypes, and also breaking the glass ceiling at the same time. And so we thought, based on, and Eric can give more background on Widen the Screen, but, that platform is so unique because it does break down biases, in the media, that people have, whether that's about gender or whether that's about, ethnicity, culture, or you name it. So we thought they've been in the zeitgeist with this platform and doing some amazing work. So we thought, okay, this is just the next evolution of that partnership and relationship. And that's why we brought in P&G. And Eric can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, no, this was a great partnership, and I'll maybe just take a step back and just talk about the chronological order and how a lot of these things happened that Drew's talked about. But post the George Floyd movement, when a lot of advertisers and companies were increasing their investment in media, from that, P&G has always been in this space around addressing bias, but we wanted to do something a little different. We wanted to do something that we could control, that had meaningful impact on the business, as well as in society. So in 2021, we launched Widen the Screen. And the intent and purpose was to, one, bring more accurate portrayal to, various communities. And we were going to start with the Black community first, and really communicating the full spectrum of the Black experience, right? And not the stereotypical either extreme drama or even extreme stardom, right? But there's so much in between in terms of the Black experience and stories to be told, and tell it in an accurate way. So that was the first job. And that was translating to more in terms of the commercials and the brands that we have in our portfolio. But we also saw an opportunity to really expand the ecosystems, hence Widen the Screen, right? We saw a disparity in the number of advertising dollars going to Black-owned and operated media. We saw the lack of inventory out there. We saw the lack of creators. So Widen the Screen is really founded on being an expansive content creation, talent development through creators, and partnership platform that grows the ecosystem in the Black media and film and entertainment ecosystem, that enables our brands to go reach these desired audiences, right? What we see time and time again, we have some very big brands. Let's take Tide, for example. Only reaches probably about 70 to 80% of the households, which in theory, everybody needs to do laundry. So we really need to reach 100% of potential consumers. But we kept hovering around this 70, 80% across, toothpaste, which is Crest. Everybody brushes their teeth. Toilet paper. Everybody uses toilet paper, at least should use it. And wash their clothes. But we found that the reach that we were not getting was really around multicultural reach. And the ecosystem just didn't exist for how P&G wanted to buy and reach that media. So as leaders in this space, we said, you know what? We're going to launch Widen the Screen. It's going to be one, accurate content, portrayal of communities. Two, we're going to take the lead in growing the ecosystem. So invest in creators and content in media partnerships. So with that, we've done These Hands with the Uninterrupted team. That was a catalyst. And then when this film came along, it was a perfect match, right? One, it was a story that really expresses, gets into the fuller spectrum of the Black experience, with Renee being an activist, Renee being an NBA player, with Renee being an owner, just reverses some of those stereotypes. And that's where we were after. We were after these unique stories that could send a message, but at the same time, consistent with our brand equities. And with the acquisition of Mielle was a perfect fit for this. Mielle is now has a WNBA contract. It is now the official textured hair care brand of the WNBA. Sorry, I might have said NFL, but WNBA. So this was a perfect match. Mielle already has a relationship with the WNBA. They're into basketball. With Renee being a leader and Monique Rodriguez, who owns the Mielle brand, are both natural leaders in their own space and breaking glass ceilings. So it was just a perfect match in terms of this storyline, consistent with the equities of Mielle. So we've created a lot of shoulder content around the film and presented by Mielle. And it was just magic. And then bringing these two together. And that's what we want to create. It's, how do we, and we did a media deal with Roku as well. When, you're watching that film, when it goes to commercial break, we're going to put, Mielle brand ads around it. And that's the space we want to be in. It's relevant brand messaging and communication and resonant media programming, right? We see an ad effectiveness gain when we do that. It's like having a Lowe's commercial around HGTV programming. You're already in that mindset of home improvement and you see a Lowe's ad, it just resonates and hits harder, right? So that's the space we want to be in versus, our brand ads showing up against random programming that may or may not have anything to do with it. But that's where I think the magic came in. That's why the fit for this, it fitted with, our business objectives to grow markets and grow brands. It fits with our Widen the Screen objectives around great storytelling. It just was it's a great fit for the brand. So I can't wait to see some of the in-market results in terms of how this film helped to grow or contributed to the market share growth for Mielle.
Yeah, that's great. That helps a lot. And it's Mielle, right?
Yes.
Okay. Woo! Yay, spelling. So as an expert in hair care, Chris, clearly so that's interesting, like the juxtaposition of advertising, audience, distribution, and of course, married to the right content.
Mhm.
Everybody can think of an example, the one my husband and I always think of is, being a couple episodes into like Only Murders in the Building, and then we see 3 Limu Emu ads like back to back. And, what does that have to do with anything, right? So talk to me about like, what you were looking for specifically for the platform, how you came across this project, and then how great it is to have like a brand that is an advertiser that were they already an advertiser on Roku, or is this like a new brand? And just knowing that where the show travels and where the content travels, to your point, Eric, with like the social content too being brought to you by like how all that's packaged together. Because everybody always says, oh, I want to win a trophy. I have a trophy here sitting on my son's desk for content, but you also have to think about like the consumer experience. What platform is she watching it on? Where are they watching it with or without ads? How are they going to find out about the content, on social first? So yeah, tell me about how this project ended up in your inbox as well.
Yeah, so I think Roku was the final piece of the puzzle here. We were approached by both P&G Studios as well as Uninterrupted, who had been putting this project together and were nearly complete with it. As I mentioned before, Roku is the #1 streaming platform in America. It's the front door of TV for about half of the U.S., which means that we can reach a big audience. We also have Roku Originals. These are original and exclusive series and films that we have on our platform that we work with studios or production companies on. And so we're always looking for new, exciting Roku original properties that we think our audience is going to gravitate towards. And certainly we have certain specific type of things that we're looking for. And as has been mentioned already on this call, the rise of women's sports, or at least the consumption of women's sports in streaming, was reaching sort of a fever pitch, and we were really focused on making sure that we were super serving our audience with the kind of content that they were looking for, both curating live sports content, particularly women's sports, WNBA, NWSL, as well as those stories around the sports as well that Phil had talked about, Uninterrupted focusing on. And so when they approached us about this felt like a really great opportunity to license a film that we knew our audience was going to like. But then also P&G is a big partner of ours, and we work with P&G very, very closely across their whole portfolio of brands. And what was exciting about this opportunity was that we felt like we could not only have a new Roku original that was going to sort of fit what it is that we were looking for, but also work with P&G and work with Michele to use all of the different things that we have on our platform to surround the film with the Michele messaging and branding in an effective way, to sort of take, as Eric said, those sort of content goals, but also those business goals and marry them together. The film's not about Michele, right? And so how do you make sure that we can put the film in front of our audience, get as many people to see it as possible, but then also in an appropriate way, make sure that the Michele presenting sponsorship comes through, that when the ad serves, it serves in the right way to the right people, that we use the most effective product that we have. Eric, as you know, we have an interactive ad now where you can click OK on your remote to learn more about the product and stuff like that. And so how can we use all of those things that we use for advertisers, not just on any content, but on the perfect, precise content that marries the Michele brand with the Renee story. And so that was just an exciting, obviously we love the film regardless, but that also made it really an exciting way for us to take those two core pillars of ours, content and working with advertisers, and put them together in an effective way. And so that was really exciting. And then again, to make sure that we could feature it in our women's sports zone, to feature it in our just newly launched Roku Sports channel, which is a live linear fast channel, and to give it some premium placement there. And then even take some of the content that Eric was talking about with the founder of Michele and Renee sitting down and having a conversation, and feature that as well in places that made sense for our audience to find and enjoy as well. So it was an exciting way to put all of those pieces together. And you talk about TuneIn. One of the things that Roku is most effective at, because we own the platform, because our home screen's the first thing, like I said, half of streamers see when they turn on their TV. We're very good at putting content in front of people and then driving them into that content. And so from a platform standpoint, that was our focus. How do we use all of that different placements and merchandising to get as many people into the content as possible? And then also worked with this broader team on things like earned media, interviews, social media, all to support sort of TuneIn. And I think we're very pleased with the results. It was the #1 title on the Roku channel for the weekend that it launched, which is a big deal for us and a big deal, I think, for this title. And so we certainly were able to accomplish our goal of getting our audience to see this film.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yes, Roku has its own little Roku nuances to get people to turn into the content. And that's what's great about it. And to your point, like 50% of the people wake up and they want to watch Roku. So it's like the brand recognition and the product recognition is also great. So question for Anke and Sandrine. So out of all of these squares, you first met Phil. Phil had got to have his fangirl moment and got to work with Sandrine on a project. walk me through like your first meeting with Renee and trying to like get the story out of all of these moving pieces and who fit in when. So clearly you met Phil first, so you knew Uninterrupted was behind this. And then did you meet Renee or did you meet Eric for like what kind of happened and in what order and how did that kind of shape the story?
We met Phil first.
Fangirl, you can just call him Fangirl. That's
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, we were just as excited to work with Uninterrupted, I mean, when it comes to, authentic storytelling, specifically in the sports space, they're the leaders as far as I'm concerned. And I think, thank you, Phil, for fangirling and calling out the experience that we have, but I think here, at Storyform, we specialize in telling authentic stories in high profile spaces. This is a high profile space. You're dealing with the NBA, you're dealing with Uninterrupted, which is a high profile company. You're dealing with P&G, a high profile brand. You're dealing with Renee, who has built her own brand over the course of, basically decades, if you really go back to her as a player and then eventually an activist and now, an owner. So, and she's also an on-camera personality. So, it's a very dynamic and intimate environment, and trying to balance all of that together is really invigorating for us as storytellers. So when, Phil, reached out to us, I mean, I was fangirling just as much, and was really excited. I think what was also, authentic to the brand of Uninterrupted is they introduced us to Renee and her wife, who always said that there was going to be a documentary made about her and who did a lot of self-documenting. And they really let, in the spirit of athlete-led storytelling, like they let Renee decide like who is going to be the best person to tell the story. And thankfully we were the ones. So after that, it was the first meeting with Renee in very sort of Gen Z millennial like fashion. I went out to Atlanta by myself with a small camera, which is normally what I do when I meet, people. I don't want to have a big footprint. And we met at a gas station, and I was waiting for them to pick me up because we were going to some event that I was going to shoot. And Renee was the first one to turn a camera on me. Like, they had, their iPhones out. And that was like initially like the first idea. I was like, okay, well, you know what, we're going to incorporate a lot of the self-shot material here from Renee, because first of all, it's very 21st century. People are going to understand that. And in terms of intimate storytelling, I mean, even though I feel like we're very good at it, there's nothing like self-documentation and intimacy. So we incorporated a lot of that, and we were able to give that a look. And then initially, I think the story was meant to be told more in present tense. And as we sort of started digging into it, as a matter of fact, and I think it was right that first meeting that we had, I realized, and I came back to Anke and Phil and the team over at Uninterrupted, that there was a lot of backstory here that was important to be told in terms of understanding the leadership that Renee, shows today. And to sort of hop onto what Eric was saying, specifically around Black excellence, specifically around how her parents had raised her, specifically around the strong story on the HBCU piece. And I felt like, and this was a back and forth, this was a real organic process, which is why it took a little bit of time. But, again, it was meant to be told more in present tense, but the history of what makes a true leader, on the court in high school, at one of the biggest universities in the country. I mean, arguably, Gino Auriemma put, women's basketball on the map. You don't just like walk onto a team like that and then become a leader. Like, what does that mean? Like, who are you? And then, eventually in the WNBA, being a captain and, coming all the way into, a co-owner and vice president of the Atlanta Dream. So thankfully, we were able to have a real organic experience with Uninterrupted, having conversations with them about where we felt the movie was heading. Anke will tell you that, that as a producer, that means you have to juggle a little bit of, what it was intended to be and what it actually became and what does that mean for the budget, et cetera. But ultimately, I think we were able to, again, tell an authentic story. And I think, really, really happy that P&G came on board, saw it, and understood that it resonates with audiences. And I think that's what a lot of people want to see, is authentic stories that resonate with audiences. And then associating that with brands, really, speaks to the brand ethos itself. And I think that that's what people are looking for these days is like, well, who are you as a brand? Like, what do you really stand for?
Yep.
And I think this film speaks to that. And the fact that P&G and Roku got behind it really speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So when you, at that gas station, when you first met Renee, so presumably this was after February 21, she was already part owner of the Dream?
Yeah, so it was in November, I think early November of 21. It was like right before Thanksgiving. That's when we first met, and we sort of, again, like the way that I normally deal with meeting people is I normally go in there basically by myself, with a smaller camera. Thankfully, technology means that small cameras still mean big images, so that's good. And actually a lot of the stuff that you see there was, especially in the present tense, was shot just basically by me with a camera on my shoulder. And that's how I've learned to keep, an intimate space, again, with high profile people in high profile, situations. It's like, because that's what you want. You want authenticity, you want intimacy, you want their true story. And I think, that's something that we've built at Storyform, but I know for a fact that that's the way that Uninterrupted tells stories as well, because I've seen all their other content. And so that's the type of talent they seek. And fortunately, we were part of that. So
yeah, that's great. And Anke, like, how did you know, like, when did it hit you when you knew how far you had to go back and where you had to go? Like, covering her parents' birth, or are we just going to start with college? Like, how did you know, like, do I have to go to all these different locations? Do I have to clear all this footage from 1980, whatever, all those different kinds of pieces? How do you tell a story without going too deep into the historical?
Well, I think the first inclination came when Sandrine, she came back after the meeting. She was like, this was great. And guess what? They filmed everything. And, this is maybe something we should look into. And, they're constantly, obviously, there's this constant sort of self-portrayal, but also telling your story on social media, which is what helped Renee build the brand and also get the message out about all these fascinating things she's been doing, right? So very innocently, we were like, well, how about we gain access to some of these things? And lo and behold, there was over 10 plus terabytes of just footage, just right there, right? And that was maybe just the last year and a half. So I thought, okay, so there's just a year and a half of stuff. And then meeting and listening to her and really understanding the story, like it helped us sort of piece together the moments in time from opting out to what did she have to go through, getting married, down to, becoming the owner, and how sort of during a time when COVID was still very sort of present, right? So it wasn't like all in person. So we were able to like really piece it all together and then understand like her parents, her family, her upbringing has a real big role in this, right?
Agree, yeah.
Rooting foundation in terms of like, where do people come from in order that do great things or that do, breaking through glass ceilings, that are trailblazers. It was very clear that was a big part of who she is. And frankly, her parents are involved daily. Like she talks to them every day. We were there for some of these conversations, So it was understood that had to become part of what we're telling here. And then obviously her college career. So there were so many moments. So it wasn't, it's sort of a revelation that just kind of popped in. And then in Uninterrupted and Phil and his team, we had a great partner to sort of be like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're, how does this work in storytelling now? Because we all thought we were making one film. And it turned out we were maybe going into a bit of a different direction, which is part of what informed the structure that you have now, which is sort of like an A and B. We try to sort of, stay in the present day, but also kind of highlight throughout her sort of life, actually, what led to certain moments in time, right? So we tried to, and Uninterrupted was a great partner in it. And, I'm not sure what prompted at some point, I think Phil and Drew talked about this, bringing P&G in, and we thought, okay, let's see, and P&G, to their credit, embraced exactly the same sort of beats and moments that we all felt very strongly about and gravitated to. So
right, it wasn't like Eric was like, nope, shoot it all again.
Exactly. So it became a great conversation. Drew was a great facilitator there. Drew and Phil really sort of brought that to us in a very great way, and it became an asset, rather than, because you just never know when you're in the process of putting these stories together, adding partners in, whether it's a network or another brand partner, what does that look like? And it just added to the dream team.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. What I think everybody has a hard stop at 4, right? Or 1, whatever. Jordan's probably still finishing up his sandwich. What's next? So the reason I ask is because one of like the guttural, instinctual things I have when I watch a piece of content is, do I want to watch more? Like, God, I hope that's everybody's litmus test to a certain degree, right? And for this one, it wasn't just I wanted my kids to watch it. It's like, now let's define more. Like, do I want more Renee? Do I want it, like, her family's adorable. I would love to keep following her family and like her business journey with the dream. Is there another player? Is there another sport? Is there another, like, what is the story? Because it's interesting how we had talked about this at the very, very beginning in terms of embracing expanding the screen mantra. Yes, it was a female. Yes, she's Black. Yes, she's LGBTQ, but that wasn't front and center. Like, it wasn't like this is the LGBTQ show or this is the Black women show. It's just a really great story, right? And it has business implications, it has sports implications, it has family and, being a stepmom implication. So like, what's next? Like, Eric, I'm going to pick on you because you're unmuted, but like, what do you see? Is it just expanding the screen more and more? Expand the screen.
Yeah, and I mean, by no means do we feel that we're going to achieve our objectives of growing the ecosystem and creating more content and partnerships and creators in one film. So this is an ongoing journey for us. We'll continue to do this for AA, Hispanic, APA, even LGBTQ. We got a lot of stories to tell, a lot of brands to associate, right? To grow the business in that. So, I mean, really, this is one of the few. We're still early in this model, this advertising model that we're trying to ignite for brands. So it's going to take a couple of more of these to really get the flywheel going. So I'm excited to see what additional stories that we can go tell that haven't been told. Or, to your point, no, it's not hitting your head over that it's women empowerment, that it's, a story about identity. There's a story about breaking glass ceilings. Those are we just want to normalize that and make it everyday storytelling, and not necessarily have it to stand out that way. But I just look forward to, seeing the results of this and how we can continue to create these powerful stories that have meaning and purpose.
Yeah, that's great. Phil, what about you? What's next? More and more. I feel like I could like follow Renee on social and I would like say to one of my mom, like, oh, I totally know her because I saw this film, right? Like, I feel like I know her family.
You do. I mean, she
Yeah.
jumps off screen and is an open book, which is what everyone wishes for in a
Right.
So yes, if P&G and or Roku want to call me up to do the Renee reality show and keep going, we're definitely game.
I mean, like, I want her to run for office. Can that be the next film? Like, let's do
She
that.
probably will.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
you know, in terms of what's next for us, we are always going to be making sports documentaries and sports docuseries, and I think what Drew and Eric and Chris have been able to do in terms of meeting the advertiser and the consumer and the content in the same place is super important in order to, let's be honest, sell products, just given what the consumption landscape is right now. I'm happy to hear, Michele, that you also have Hulu with ads, because so do I, and my friends shame me for it. But it is really interesting to see the times when it clicks and the times when it does not click at all. And I think that's ultimately what, you know, when these types of groups all come together, it can work really well. And I'm excited to see more of that. You know, now that athletes are their own brands, you know, that helps everybody as well. You know, Renee has a podcast, she's on TV, she's, you know, having her big fancy job, she's out in the streets. So like who you know, who better to be a evangelist for a brand than someone like that? So yeah, I'm excited to do more with this group.
Yeah, that's great. I also think it's perfect that the two guys who, you know, put 1 and 1 together to make 3 to evangelize a hair care brand, Eric and Drew, have by far the most hair. So like it definitely works.
It's
working for me, right?
It is intentional. Yes.
I mean, if you're gonna put 2 heads together, why not, right? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I can't wait to like meet and hug and do all the things together. Everybody's going, right? Park City. Woo, Park City or bust. Yes, and I fully expect Phil to be wearing like a fangirl Sandrine hat or sweatshirt or something. What?
Oh, I have my Storyform trucker hat. Don't you worry. I'll pull that out.
Yes, I approve. And then we all have to work together if, you know, when Renee runs for office, that'll be another whole like project we can work out together. All right. I think that's it. Thanks everybody for the time. I'm sure everybody has to run, but can't wait to see you all in January.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michele. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.